After 20 years, both men ended up in almost the exact same place, somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000 in net worth. Same starting point, same income, the same exact $50,000 at the beginning. And yet, if you sat down with each of them and really listened to how those 20 years felt, you'd realize they didn't just take different paths, they lived completely different lives. One of them spent those years carrying a $200,000 mortgage, dealing with tenants who didn't always pay on time, answering late-night calls about broken pipes, and slowly coming to terms with the fact that owning a property doesn't mean the work ever really stops. The other one didn't deal with any of that. No tenants, no emergencies, no weekends spent fixing something that couldn't wait until Monday. So if the outcome looks almost identical, then something about this equation doesn't make sense, because one of these paths is quietly leaving something out, and the part it's leaving out is the part that ends up mattering the most. But to see it clearly, you have to go back before the stress, before the second guessing, back to the moment when everything still looked like a smart, obvious decision. At the beginning, the choice feels almost too simple. You're sitting there with $50,000, and in your mind there are really only two directions this could go. One path feels active. It feels like you're doing something real with your money, buying something you can touch, something you can point to, something that exists in the world outside of a screen. The other path feels quiet, almost invisible, like you're putting money somewhere and hoping time does the rest. Jake chooses the first path. He uses the entire $50,000 as a 20% down payment on a $250,000 rental property, a modest 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood where people are always looking for a place to live. He signs a 30-year mortgage at 7%, locking in a monthly payment of about $1,330. Within a few weeks, he finds a tenant willing to pay $1,800 a month. On paper, that's $470 in profit every single month. And in those early moments, that number feels powerful. It feels like confirmation. It feels like he made the right move. Marcus goes the other way. He takes the same $50,000 and puts it into a total stock market index fund. No leverage, no property, no keys, nothing he can physically stand in front of and say, "That's mine." Then he sets up an automatic contribution of $300 a month. And after that, he doesn't really do anything else. No meetings. No phone calls, no sense of progress you can see day to day. At dinner, Jake has a story to tell. Marcus has a brokerage account and a confirmation email, and early on it doesn't feel close at all. But that feeling, that sense that one path is clearly better, is exactly where things begin to get misleading. For the first few years, Jake feels like he made the smarter choice. Every month, $1,800 shows up in his account. It's consistent, it's visible. It feels like something he built. He drives past the property on his way to work, sometimes slowing down just a little, looking at it the way people look at something they're proud of. And in his head, there's always that same quiet thought, "I own that." There's a kind of emotional weight to that feeling that numbers alone can't compete with. On top of that, he's getting tax benefits. Mortgage interest and depreciation help reduce his taxable income, saving him a few $1,000s each year. The neighborhood is improving. Comparable homes are slowly ticking up in value. Everything about the situation feels like it's moving in the right direction. But what Jake is experiencing is only the visible layer of the investment, because underneath that $1,800 rent check, there's an entirely different set of numbers quietly working against him. Property taxes run about $3,000 a year. Insurance adds another $1,500. And maintenance, something that always sounds manageable in theory, starts showing up in ways that are anything but predictable. A $1,200 water heater replacement, a $2,800 roof repair that couldn't be delayed. 1 month where the property sits empty, costing him $1,800 in lost rent, plus another $600 just to clean and relist it. By the end of year 3, Jake has collected roughly $64,800 in rent. His mortgage payments total about $47,880. On paper, that leaves $16,920 in cash flow. But once you subtract everything else, the real number drops to somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000. And that still doesn't include the hours he spent managing everything. Meanwhile, Marcus logs into his account once every few months. Year 1, his $50,000 becomes about $55,000. Year 2, around $61,000. By year 3, after adding $10,800 in contributions, his portfolio sits near $76,000. It doesn't feel exciting. It doesn't feel like progress. But nothing is quietly eating away at it either. By year 5, Jake is fully in it. This isn't a side project anymore, it's part of his life. He's replaced a roof for $8,500. He's dealt with a plumbing issue that cost $1,400. He's raised rent to $1,950, trying to keep up with rising expenses only to watch property taxes and insurance climb alongside it. After everything, his real return lands somewhere between 3% and 5%. Not terrible, but not what he imagined when he first saw that $470 number. Marcus, on the other hand, is still doing the same thing he's always done. He contributes $300 a month. He doesn't try to time the market. He doesn't react to headlines. And slowly, almost quietly, something starts to change. By year 7, his portfolio grows to somewhere between $135,000 and $150,000. The growth isn't just steady anymore, it's starting to accelerate. Jake's investment is still growing too, but it's constantly being pulled in different directions by costs, by repairs, by time. Marcus's investment moves differently. It compounds. At first, it barely feels noticeable. Then it becomes something you can see. And eventually it becomes something that's hard to ignore. By year 10, the illusion reaches its peak. Jake's property is worth roughly $335,000 to $350,000. His remaining mortgage sits around $166,000, giving him equity between $170,000 and $184,000. Marcus's portfolio sits between $165,000 and $180,000. They look almost identical, and for a moment it feels like the race is still even. But the next 10 years don't behave the same way. Over the next decade, everything accelerates, but not in the same way. Jake's property continues to appreciate, reaching somewhere between $450,000 and $500,000. His mortgage is either paid off or nearly there, leaving him with equity in that same range. He's collected rent the entire time, but after maintenance, repairs, taxes, insurance, and at least one major renovation, his total net profit from cash flow ends up somewhere between $40,000 and $80,000. Marcus's portfolio, growing at roughly 10% annually with $300 monthly contributions, reaches somewhere between $420,000 and $460,000. He's contributed a total of $122,000 over 20 years. Everything else over $300,000 is the result of compounding. No tenants, no debt, no late-night emergencies. When you compare the final numbers, they land in the same general range. But when you look at how each of them got there, the difference is impossible to ignore. Jake worked for his outcome. Marcus waited for his. So the next time someone tells you that real estate always wins, or that the stock market is the smarter move, don't ask them which one made more money. Ask them what they included. Did they count the hours? Did they count the stress? Did they count the years where nothing seemed to be happening? Because the answer that includes everything is the only answer that actually matters.